The stars of the Voron Nebula burned cold and blue against the darkness of space. Hundreds of warships floated in formation, their hulls gleaming with advanced technology from a dozen different alien civilizations. This was the Allied fleet, the greatest military force the galaxy had ever assembled. They had come together for one purpose: to stop the Drakh Empire before it consumed everything. Admiral Kira of the Vallani stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Times Starbreaker **. His silver skin reflected the light from the holographic displays around him. He was tall, thin, and his 4 eyes moved constantly, watching every detail. The Vallani were known for their intelligence and their pride. They believed themselves to be the most advanced species in the known galaxy. And Kira believed it more than most. "All ships have reported in," said his second officer. "We have 412 vessels ready for battle." Kira nodded slowly. The fleet was impressive. The Vallani had brought their plasma cruisers. The Torak had sent their heavy battleships, massive things covered in thick armor. The Nyx contributed their fast attack ships, small but deadly. Even the mysterious Orm had joined, their living ships pulsing with strange organic light. But there was one more ship coming, one that Kira did not want. "Sir," the communications officer said, "we are receiving a signal from the edge of the sector. The human vessel has arrived." Kira's 4 eyes narrowed. Humans. He had heard stories about them. A young species from a small blue planet. They had only discovered space travel a few centuries ago. While the Vallani had been building empires that stretched across star systems, humans had been playing with fire and sharp rocks. They were children, babies. And yet, they had insisted on joining the Allied fleet. "Put it on the main display," Kira ordered. The hologram flickered, and then the human ship appeared. Kira stared at it for a long moment. Then he started to laugh. The ship was ugly. There was no other word for it. It was a big, blocky thing, all hard angles and thick metal plates. It had no elegance, no grace. Where Vallani ships curved like works of art, this human vessel looked like someone had welded together a bunch of cargo containers and called it a warship. It moved slowly through space, its engines burning with visible fire instead of the clean energy drives that proper civilizations used. "What is that?" Kira asked, still laughing. "Is that their warship or their garbage transport?" The bridge crew joined in the laughter. Even the normally serious tactical officer was smiling. "It is called the Times Endurance **, the communications officer reported, reading from the data stream. "It is the flagship of the human contribution to the Alliance." "Flagship?" Kira could barely speak through his amusement. "That is the best they have?" On board the Times Endurance **, Captain Tejo stood perfectly still. He was a man of average height, with a calm face and steady eyes. He wore a simple gray uniform without decoration. His hands were clasped behind his back as he watched the main screen. He could see the alien fleet ahead of him. Beautiful ships that looked like they belonged in a museum. He could also see the message indicators flashing. The aliens were talking about his ship. "Captain," said Lieutenant Wujin from the communication station. "We are receiving transmissions from several Allied vessels. Should I put them through?" "Yes," Tejo said quietly. The bridge filled with voices, all of them translated by the ship's computer, and all of them were laughing. "Look at that thing. It moves like a dying animal. Are those chemical rockets? My ancestors stopped using those 1,000 years ago. Maybe they got lost. Someone should tell them the war is in space, not on a primitive planet. I heard humans still use projectile weapons. Can you imagine? Throwing metal at your enemies like cave dwellers?" Wujin's face turned red with anger. He was young, only 25 years old, and he had worked hard to earn his place on this mission. He had believed they would be treated as equals. Now he understood the truth. "Captain," he said through clenched teeth. "Permission to respond." "Denied," Tejo said calmly. "But sir, they are insulting us. They are insulting all of humanity." Tejo turned to look at his young officer. His expression did not change. "Let them laugh, Lieutenant," Words do not win wars. In the engine room, Chief Engineer Hana was running final checks on the ship's systems. She was a small woman with short black hair and grease stains on her uniform. She had designed half of the modifications on this ship herself. When she heard the alien transmissions playing over the internal speakers, she just shook her head and smiled. "They think we are slow," she said to her assistant, a young man named Dae-Soo. "They think our technology is primitive. Is it not?" Dae-Soo asked nervously. He was fresh from the academy, and this was his first real mission. "I mean, compared to them," Hana laughed. It was a warm sound, not cruel like the alien laughter. "Dae-Soo, let me tell you something about humans. We did not survive by being the fastest or the strongest. We survived by being stubborn. We survived by refusing to give up, and we survived by finding ways to win that no one else thought of." She patted the metal wall of the engine room lovingly. "This ship is not pretty, but she is tough. And when the time comes, she will show them what she can do." On the bridge of the Times, Starbreaker **, Admiral Kira was still enjoying himself. He had called a meeting of all the Allied commanders, and the holographic images of a dozen different species now filled his bridge. They were all discussing the human ship. "We cannot let them fight alongside us," said General Torak of the Torak Empire. He was a massive creature, covered in thick scales, with a voice like grinding rocks. "They will be destroyed in the first minute of battle. It will be embarrassing for the Alliance." "I agree," clicked Admiral Nix, her insectoid face showing what might have been amusement. "Perhaps we should send them home. For their own protection." "Of course. We cannot do that," said the Orm representative, a being of shifting light that was difficult to look at directly. "The humans signed the Alliance Treaty. They have the right to fight." Kira waved one of his long hands dismissively. "Fine, let them come, but we will put them in the rear. Guard duty. They can watch our supply ships while the real warriors fight the Drak." There was general agreement among the commanders. It was decided. The humans would be pushed to the back, far from the battle, where they could not embarrass anyone. Fleet Commander Yuna received the orders on the Times Endurance **. She was Taeho's second in command. A woman with sharp features and sharper intelligence. She had spent years studying alien tactics and strategies. She understood exactly what this assignment meant. "They have assigned us to the rear guard," she told Taeho, her voice carefully controlled. "We are to protect the supply convoy, 50,000 kilometers behind the main battle line." Taeho nodded slowly. "I see. Captain, this is an insult. They are treating us like children, like we are not worthy to fight beside them." "Yes," Taeho agreed. "They are." Yuna stared at him, confused by his calm acceptance. "And you are just going to accept this?" And Taeho walked to the large window at the front of the bridge. He looked out at the alien fleet, at all those beautiful, advanced ships. He thought about the history of his species. He thought about all the times humans had been underestimated. By nature, by each other, by fate itself. "Commander," he said softly, "there is an old saying on Earth. The loudest laugh often comes before the hardest fall." He turned back to face his crew. Every single one of them was watching him, waiting for his guidance. "Take us to our assigned position," he ordered. "And make sure all weapon systems are fully charged. Something tells me this war is going to be more interesting than our new friends expect. Maybe smart. Maybe smart. Maybe smart." The Endurance Times moved slowly past the gleaming alien fleet. The laughter followed it all the way. The aliens pointed and joked and congratulated themselves on their obvious superiority. None of them noticed the way the human crew moved with quiet confidence. None of them wondered why the humans did not seem worried. None of them thought to scan the human ship more carefully, to see what might be hidden beneath that ugly, primitive exterior. They were too busy laughing. And far across the sector, hidden in the darkness between stars, the Drak Empire was preparing its own surprise. A fleet 3 times larger than anyone expected, a weapon that would disable the most advanced technology in the galaxy. The stage was set. The players had taken their positions. And the galaxy was about to learn a very old lesson about the danger of underestimating humans. But that lesson would come later. For now, the aliens laughed. The humans waited. And the cold stars of the Voron Nebula burned on in silence. The Times Endurance Times took her position at the rear of the Allied fleet, 50,000 kilometers behind the main battle line. From here, the great warships of the Alliance looked like distant stars, bright points of light against the endless darkness. The supply convoy floated nearby, 20 transport ships carrying food, ammunition, and medical supplies. It was important work. It was also the work given to those who were not trusted to fight. Lieutenant Wu Jin sat at his station, staring at his console. His jaw was tight, and his hands gripped the edges of his chair. He had dreamed of this mission since he was a child. He had trained for years, sacrificed everything, worked harder than anyone else in his class, and now he was babysitting cargo ships, while the real battle happened somewhere else. "This is wrong," he muttered to himself. "This is completely wrong." Beside him, Ensign Bo-Ra looked up from her navigation console. She was young, barely 22, with a round face and curious eyes. "What did you say, Lieutenant?" Wu Jin shook his head. "Nothing. Just talking to myself. Just talking to myself." "You are angry," Bo-Ra observed. She had a habit of stating the obvious, which annoyed some people but often helped others think more clearly. "About the assignment." "Of course I am angry," Wu Jin snapped, then immediately lowered his voice. "Sorry. Yes, I am angry. We came all this way to help them fight. We offered our lives, our ship, everything, and they stuck us in the back like useless baggage." Bo-Ra thought about this for a moment. "Maybe they are trying to protect us. Our ship is slower than theirs. Our technology is different. Perhaps they think we would be in danger. They think we are primitive," Wu Jin corrected bitterly. "They think we are stupid cave people who accidentally stumbled into space. They do not respect us at all." From across the bridge, Fleet Commander Yuna listened to the conversation. She understood Wu Jin's frustration. She felt it herself, burning in her chest like a hot coal. But she also understood something that the young lieutenant did not. "Lieutenant," she said, and both officers turned to look at her. "Let me tell you a story." Yuna walked slowly across the bridge, her boots making soft sounds on the metal floor. "When I was a girl, my grandmother told me about the first contact. When the Volani arrived on Earth, they expected to find primitive creatures. Animals, maybe. Certainly not a civilization. But there we were. Building cities. Creating art. Dreaming of the stars." She paused by the window, looking out at the distant alien fleet. "Do you know what the Volani said when they met our leaders?" Wu Jin shook his head. "They said we were lucky. Lucky that they found us before someone dangerous did. Lucky that they were willing to teach us. Lucky that they allowed us to join the galactic community." Yuna's voice was calm, but there was steel underneath it. "They never considered that we might have something to teach them." "And do we?" Bo-Ra asked quietly. Yuna smiled. It was not a happy smile. "I guess we will find out." In the captain's quarters, Taeho was reviewing tactical data. His small room was neat and simple, with no decorations except for a single photograph on his desk. It showed a woman and 2 children standing in front of a house with a red door. His family, back on Earth. He had not seen them in 2 years. The door chimed, and he looked up. "Enter." Chief Engineer Hana walked in, carrying a tablet computer. Her uniform was still stained with grease, and there were dark circles under her eyes. She had not slept in over 30 hours. "Captain," she said, "I have the final systems report. How are we looking?" Hana sat down in the chair across from his desk, something she rarely did. That alone told Taeho how tired she was. "The ship is ready. All systems are functioning at full capacity. The main batteries are fully charged. The kinetic accelerators are aligned and calibrated." Taeho nodded. The kinetic accelerators were the Times Endurance Asterisks' secret weapon. While the aliens relied on energy weapons, plasma beams, and particle cannons, humans had taken a different approach. The kinetic accelerators used powerful magnetic fields to launch solid metal projectiles at incredible speeds. No shields, no matter how advanced, could stop a chunk of tungsten traveling at a significant fraction of the speed of light. And the aliens? Tejo asked. Have they scanned us? Hana shook her head. They scanned us when we arrived, but only with basic sensors. They looked at our engines, our hull, our shield generators. They did not look deeper, because they did not think there was anything to find. Exactly. Hana allowed herself a small smile. Tejo leaned back in his chair. Their arrogance may save many lives, or get them all killed. Hana replied. Then she hesitated, and Tejo saw something in her eyes. Doubt. Fear. Things he rarely saw in his chief engineer. What is it? He asked. Captain. I have been thinking. What if we are wrong? What if our weapons really are as primitive as they believe? What if, when the battle comes, we are just as useless as they expect? Tejo was quiet for a long moment. Then he reached across the desk and picked up the photograph of his family. He looked at it for several seconds before speaking. Hana, do you know why I named this ship Time's Endurance *? She shook her head. There was a ship, long ago, back on Earth. It was called the Time's Endurance *, and it carried an expedition to the frozen southern continent. The ship became trapped in ice. It was crushed and destroyed. Everyone thought the crew would die. He put the photograph down carefully. But they did not die. They survived for almost 2 years in the most hostile environment on the planet. They crossed frozen seas in small boats. They climbed mountains that no one had ever climbed before. And in the end, every single one of them made it home alive. Hana listened, her tiredness momentarily forgotten. They survived, Tejo continued. Not because they had the best equipment or the most advanced technology. They survived because they refused to give up, because when everything went wrong, they found a way to keep going. He stood up and walked to the small window in his quarters. Outside, the stars burned cold and distant. That is what we are. That is what humanity is. We are not the fastest or the strongest or the most advanced, but we are stubborn, we are creative, and we never, ever stop fighting. He turned back to face Hana. So no, I am not worried about whether our weapons work. I am not worried about what the aliens think of us. I am only worried about one thing. What is that, Captain? Making sure that when the battle comes, we are ready to show them what humans can do. Back on the main bridge, something was happening. Wu Jin noticed it first, a change in the communication frequencies. The alien fleet was buzzing with activity. Hundreds of signals flying back and forth between ships. Commander, he called to Yuna, I am picking up a lot of chatter from the Alliance ships. Something is going on. Yuna moved quickly to his station. Can you translate it? Wu Jin worked his console, his fingers flying over the controls. The universal translator processed the alien languages, converting them into English. They are receiving reports from their scouts, he said, his face growing pale. The Drak fleet has been spotted. Where? Close. Very close. Wu Jin looked up, his eyes wide. Commander, the scouts are saying the Drak have 3 times as many ships as expected. Maybe more. The bridge went silent. 3 times as many ships. That meant over 1,000 enemy vessels against their 400. Even with superior technology. Those were terrible odds. Yuna grabbed the intercom. Captain to the bridge immediately. Tejo arrived within seconds, Hana right behind him. They gathered around the main display as Wu Jin pulled up the scout reports. The Drak are coming in fast, Wu Jin explained. ETA to the main fleet is approximately 2 hours. The Allied commanders are holding an emergency meeting right now. Put it on speaker, Tejo ordered. The bridge filled with panicked voices. Admiral Kira was trying to maintain control, but even his usually confident tone sounded shaken. We must retreat, General Torak was saying. We cannot fight a force that large. We must fall back and regroup. If we retreat, They will take the entire sector, Admiral Nix argued. Everything we have been defending will be lost. Better to lose territory than to lose the entire fleet. The arguing continued, growing louder and more desperate. Tejo listened without speaking, his face expressionless. Finally, Admiral Kira's voice cut through the chaos. Enough. We will stand and fight. The Drak may have numbers, but we have superior technology. Our weapons, our shields, our ships are the most advanced in the galaxy. We will destroy them. There was a murmur of uncertain agreement. The alien commanders were scared. But they were also proud. They could not imagine losing to anyone. No matter the odds. What about the humans? Someone asked. Should we bring them forward to reinforce the line? Kira's laugh was sharp and dismissive. The humans? What could they possibly contribute? Keep them in the rear where they belong. If we lose this battle, at least they can run away and tell everyone how the real warriors died. The communication ended. The bridge of the times, Endurance Times, was completely silent. Tejo looked at his crew, at their angry faces and clenched fists. He saw Wujin trembling with rage. He saw Yuna's cold fury. He saw Hana's quiet determination. You heard them, he said calmly. We stay in position. We guard the supplies. Captain! Wujin started to protest. And we wait. Tejo continued, his voice harder now. Because something tells me this battle is not going to go the way Admiral Kira expects. And when everything falls apart, we are going to be ready. He turned to face the main screen, where the distant alien fleet was already beginning to move into battle formation. All hands to battle stations, he ordered. This is going to be a long day. The crew moved to their positions with quiet efficiency. There was no more talk of insults or dismissals. There was only the work of preparing for war, and somewhere in the darkness between stars, 1,000 Drak warships were racing toward them, carrying a weapon that would change everything. The Drak came out of hyperspace like a swarm of angry insects. One moment, the space ahead of the Allied fleet was empty. The next moment, it was filled with ships. Hundreds of them. Then hundreds more. They kept coming, wave after wave, until the sensors could barely count them all. On the bridge of the Times, Starbreaker Asterisk, Admiral Kira stood frozen, his 4 eyes fixed on the tactical display. He had expected a large force. He had not expected this. 1,047 ships. His tactical officer reported, his voice shaking. And more are still arriving. Kira swallowed hard. The Drak fleet was massive, a wall of dark metal stretching across space. Their ships were ugly things, all sharp angles and black armor, covered with weapons platforms. They looked like predators, hungry and patient. All ships, hold formation, Kira ordered, forcing confidence into his voice. Prepare to engage. Remember, our technology is superior. One of our ships is worth 3 of theirs. He almost believed it. The battle began with a burst of light as the Villani plasma cruisers opened fire. Beautiful streams of blue energy raced across space, slamming into the front ranks of the Drak fleet. Shields flared and failed. Ships exploded. For a moment, it seemed like Kira was right. For a moment, it seemed like superior technology would win the day. Then the Drak fired back, but not with weapons. Not with missiles or energy beams or anything the Alliance had seen before. Instead, a pulse of strange energy rippled out from the Drak flagship, spreading across the battlefield like a wave through water. It was invisible to the naked eye, but the sensors detected it immediately. What was that? Kira demanded. Report. The answer came not from his officers but from his ship. The lights flickered. The holographic displays stuttered and died. The hum of the engines changed, becoming weaker, uncertain. Admiral, we are experiencing massive systems failures. Someone shouted. The main reactor is losing power. Shields are down to 30%. Shields are down to 30%. Weapons are offline, another voice called. I cannot get a targeting lock. All across the Allied fleet, the same thing was happening. The Drak pulse had done something to their technology. something that attacked the very foundations of their advanced systems. Ships that had been fighting perfectly a moment ago were now drifting helplessly, their crews scrambling to understand what had gone wrong. "It is an electromagnetic disruption wave," the science officer said, his voice filled with disbelief. "It is targeting our quantum processors, our energy relays, everything that makes our systems work. I have never seen anything like it." Kira felt cold fear grip his hearts. The Drak had developed a weapon specifically designed to destroy their technological advantage. Without their advanced systems, the Allied fleet was just a collection of metal boxes floating in space. "Emergency protocols," he ordered. "Switch to backup systems. Get those weapons online." But the backup systems used the same quantum processors, the same energy relays. They were just as vulnerable as the primary systems. 50,000 kilometers behind the battle, the Time's endurance times felt the pulse as a gentle vibration through the hull. Alarms sounded briefly, then went quiet. Systems flickered, then stabilized. "What was that?" Ensign Bora asked, looking around nervously. Wujin was already checking his console. "Some kind of energy pulse from the Drak fleet. It is affecting the Alliance ships. Their systems are failing." Yuna turned to the main display, which showed the battle in real time. She watched in horror as beautiful alien warships began to drift, their lights dimming, their weapons going silent. "They are sitting ducks," she whispered. "The Drak are going to destroy them." Captain Tejo stood perfectly still, his eyes fixed on the screen. He watched as the Drak fleet moved forward, their weapons now firing conventional missiles and energy beams at the helpless Alliance ships. Explosions bloomed across space like deadly flowers. "Captain." Hana's voice came over the intercom from engineering. "That pulse hit us too. But our systems are fine. Everything is working normally." "Why?" Tejo asked, though he already suspected the answer. "Because we do not use quantum processors. We do not have energy relays. Our systems are analog, mechanical, simple." The pulse had nothing to attack. Tejo nodded slowly. The aliens had laughed at their primitive technology. They had mocked their simple systems. And now, those simple systems were the only ones still working. On the Time's Starbreaker Asterisk, chaos reigned. The crew was running from station to station, trying desperately to restore power. Admiral Kira was shouting orders that no one could follow. Through the main window, he could see Drak missiles streaking toward his helpless ship. "Shields!" he screamed. "Someone get me shields!" The shields did not respond. The missiles struck the hull with terrible force. The ship shuddered and groaned as armor plating was torn away. Fires broke out in multiple sections. The lights went out completely, replaced by dim emergency lighting that cast everything in red. General Torok's flagship was in worse condition. The massive Torok battleship, pride of their empire, was dead in space. Its engines were cold. Its weapons were silent. Torok himself stood on the bridge, watching through the window as Drak ships surrounded him. "This cannot be," he growled, his scaled hands clenching into fists. "This cannot be happening." But it was happening. All around him, Alliance ships were dying. Some exploded instantly when missiles found their reactors. Others broke apart under sustained fire. A few tried to flee, but without functioning engines, they could only drift slowly, easy targets for the Drak hunters. The Nyx attack ships, fast and deadly under normal circumstances, were now helpless. Their pilots sat in darkness, unable to do anything but watch the enemy approach. Admiral Nyx herself sent a final transmission before her ship was destroyed. A stream of clicking sounds that the translator rendered as impossible. 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 The Orm-living ships fared better than most. Their organic systems were partially resistant to the pulse. But partially was not enough. They moved sluggishly, wounded animals trying to escape a forest fire, and the Drak cut them down one by one. In less than 20 minutes, the Allied fleet lost half its ships. 200 vessels destroyed or disabled. Thousands of crew members dead. And the Drak kept coming, relentless and merciless. On the Time's Endurance Asterisk, The crew watched in stunned silence. They had wanted respect from the Alliance. They had wanted a chance to prove themselves. But not like this. Never like this. Wujin's hands were shaking as he monitored the communications. "They are calling for help," he said quietly. "All of them. They are begging for anyone to assist." "Can anyone respond?" Yuna asked. "No. Everyone is affected by the pulse. No one can help." He paused, then looked up at her with something like hope in his eyes. "Except us." Quote, Yuna turned to Captain Tejo. He was still standing in the same position, still watching the battle with that calm, unreadable expression. "Captain," she said, "our systems are working, our weapons are online, we can help them." "We were ordered to guard the supply convoy," Tejo said quietly. "The supply convoy will not matter if everyone is dead." Tejo was silent for a long moment. On the screen, another Alliance ship exploded, its debris scattering across space like fallen leaves. "Captain," Wujin said, "I am receiving a direct transmission from Admiral Kira. He is on emergency broadcast. Let me put it through." The bridge filled with Kira's voice. But it was different now. Gone was the arrogance, the mockery, the easy confidence. What remained was fear. "This is Admiral Kira to all available ships. We are under heavy attack. Repeat. We are under heavy attack. Our systems have been disabled. We cannot fight. We cannot run. If anyone can hear this, we need immediate assistance. Please. Anyone." The transmission ended with a burst of static. The crew of the Endurance Times looked at each other. These were the people who had laughed at them. The people who had called them primitive. The people who had dismissed them as worthless. And now, they were dying. Tejo walked slowly to the captain's chair and sat down. He placed his hands on the armrests and looked out at the stars. "Commander Yuna," he said, "set course for the main battle line. Maximum speed." Yuna's eyes widened. "Sir? You heard me." "Lieutenant Wujin, open a channel to all human crew members." Wujin's fingers flew across his console. "Channel open, Captain." Tejo spoke clearly, his voice carrying to every corner of the ship. "All hands, this is the captain. The Alliance is in trouble. Their fancy technology has failed them, and they are dying out there. They laughed at us. They dismissed us. They thought we were nothing." He paused, and when he continued, there was iron in his voice. "Today, we are going to show them exactly what nothing can do. All stations prepare for combat. Weapons teams, stand by on the kinetic accelerators." This ship was built for moments like this. He cut the channel and turned to his bridge crew. They were all staring at him, waiting. "Let us go save the galaxy," he said. "And maybe teach it a lesson while we are at it." The Endurance Times turned slowly, her ugly bulk rotating toward the distant battle. Her engines fired, pushing her forward with all the speed she could manage. It was not fast. It was not impressive. But it was determined. And somewhere in the chaos of the dying fleet, someone was about to learn that slow did not mean weak. The Endurance Times moved through the battlefield like a ghost. All around her, the wreckage of once mighty warships drifted silently. Debris fields stretched for kilometers, filled with twisted metal and darker things that the crew tried not to look at too closely. The beautiful ships that had seemed so invincible just hours ago were now scattered across space in pieces. Captain Tejo stood at the front of the bridge, his eyes scanning the chaos ahead. The Drac fleet had moved past the destroyed Vanguard and was now attacking the remaining Alliance ships. Explosions lit up the darkness every few seconds as another vessel died. "Engineering, status report," he called. Hana's voice came back immediately. "All systems green, Captain. Kinetic accelerators are charged and ready. Power is stable. We are good to go." "How many shots do we have?" "The main batteries can fire 30 rounds before we need to reload. That will take about 4 minutes. Secondary batteries have another 50 rounds." Tejo did the math in his head. 30 shots from the main guns, 50 from the secondaries, against over 1,000 enemy ships. It was not nearly enough, but it would have to be. "Lieutenant Wujin, identify the Drac command ships." Wujin worked his console, his fingers moving with nervous energy. I am reading 5 large vessels at the center of their formation. Based on their energy signatures and position, I believe the largest one is their flagship. Put it on screen. The main display zoomed in on the Drac command group. The flagship was enormous. Easily 3 times the size of the Time's Endurance asterisk. It was covered in weapons platforms and armored with thick black metal. It looked like something out of a nightmare. That is our target, Tejo said quietly. Yuna moved to stand beside him. Captain, if we attack their flagship, their entire fleet will turn on us. We will be surrounded. I know. We cannot survive against 1,000 ships, even with our weapons working. I know that too. Tejo turned to look at her. But if we destroy their command structure, the rest of their fleet will be confused, disorganized. It might give the Alliance time to restore their systems and fight back. End quote. And if it does not work? Tejo was silent for a moment. Then he smiled. A small, sad smile that did not reach his eyes. Then we will have done everything we could. And that is all anyone can ask. Yuna wanted to argue. She wanted to tell him that this was suicide, that they should run, that Earth needed this ship and this crew. But she looked around the bridge at the faces of her fellow officers. She saw determination. She saw fear, yes, but also courage. These people had chosen to be here. They knew the risks. Understood, Captain, she said finally. What are your orders? Take us in, direct approach, full speed. Let us see if we can get their attention. The Time's Endurance times accelerated, pushing her engines to maximum power. She moved through the debris field, past the shattered hulls of Alliance ships, toward the heart of the Drac formation. At first, no one noticed. The Drac were busy hunting larger prey, finishing off the crippled warships of the Allied powers. A single small vessel was beneath their attention. Then the Time's Endurance times crossed into weapons range. Main battery locked on target, Ensign Bora reported. Her voice was steady, but her hands were trembling. Awaiting orders to fire. Tejo watched the Drac flagship growing larger on the screen. Wait for it. Sir, we are being scanned. The Drac have noticed us. Wait. Enemy vessels are changing course. They are moving to intercept. Wait. The bridge was silent. Everyone was holding their breath. The Drac flagship filled the screen now, so close they could see individual weapon turrets rotating toward them. Now, Tejo said. Bora pressed the firing control. The Time's Endurance times shuddered as her main batteries fired. The kinetic accelerators used magnetic fields to launch solid tungsten projectiles at incredible velocity. Unlike energy weapons, which could be blocked by shields, these were simply pieces of metal, traveling at a significant fraction of light speed. Physics did the rest. The first round struck the Drac flagship's forward section. There was no explosion, not at first. The tungsten slug simply punched through the armor like it was made of paper, carrying enough kinetic energy to vaporize everything in its path. Then the secondary explosions began as the projectile tore through power systems, weapon magazines, and crew quarters. A hole appeared in the flagship's bow, glowing red with heat. The ship shuddered visibly. Direct hit, Wujin shouted. Their forward shields are down. Massive damage to their command section. Fire again, Tejo ordered. The second round hit the flagship near its center, right where the bridge should be. This time, the explosion was much bigger. Something important had been destroyed. Something critical to the ship's operation. The Drac flagship began to list to one side, fires burning along its hull. It was not dead yet, but it was hurt. Badly hurt. The Drac fleet noticed. Dozens of ships broke away from their attacks on the Alliance vessels and turned toward the Time's Endurance asterisk. Their weapons opened fire, filling space with missiles and energy beams. Incoming fire, Yuna shouted. Multiple targets. Evasive maneuvers. All batteries, free fire. The Time's Endurance times was not fast, but her crew was skilled. Pilot Sungho threw the ship into a series of maneuvers that seemed impossible for a vessel her size, dodging between debris fields and using wrecked ships as cover. Meanwhile, the The secondary batteries opened up, sending tungsten rounds into the nearest Drak attackers. A Drak destroyer vanished in a flash of light as a kinetic round punched through its reactor. Another ship lost its engines and began spinning helplessly. A third took a hit to its weapon systems and went dark. But there were too many of them. Far too many. A missile struck the Times. Endurance Asterisks port side. And the ship rang like a bell. Warning lights flashed across every console. Damage reports flooded in. Hull breach on Deck 7. Someone reported. Sealing emergency bulkheads. We have lost secondary battery 3. Crew is evacuating. In engineering, Hana worked frantically to keep the ship running. Sparks flew from damaged consoles. The lights flickered constantly. But the main systems held. The kinetic accelerators kept firing. "Come on, old girl," Hana whispered to the ship. "Just a little longer." On the bridge, Teho watched the Drak flagship through the chaos. It was still fighting, still directing its fleet, but it was badly damaged. One more good hit might finish it. "Bo-Ra? Can you get a shot at their flagship?" "Working on it, sir. The angle is difficult with all these ships in the way. Find a way." Another missile hit the Times Endurance Asterisk, this time near the stern. The engines groaned in protest. "We are losing thrust," Sung-Ho called. "I can only give you half power. It will have to be enough. Keep us moving." The battle raged on. The Times, Endurance Times, was surrounded now. Enemy ships on every side. Her hull was scarred with impact craters and burn marks. Fires burned in several sections, but she kept fighting, her kinetic rounds still finding targets, still destroying enemy vessels. The Drak could not understand it. This primitive ship, this ugly relic of an inferior species, was tearing through their fleet. Their shields, which had stopped so many energy weapons before, were useless against simple chunks of metal. Their advanced sensors could not track projectiles that moved so fast. They threw everything at the Times Endurance Asterisk, but she refused to die. "I have a shot," Bo-Ra suddenly shouted. "Clear line to the flagship. It will only last 2 seconds. Take it." Bo-Ra fired the main battery one more time. The tungsten round streaked across space, passing between 2 Drak cruisers, narrowly missing a piece of debris, and slamming into the Drak flagship's engine section. The explosion was massive. The flagship's rear third simply ceased to exist, replaced by an expanding cloud of fire and metal. The rest of the ship went dark, all power gone, all systems dead. It began to drift, slowly rotating, nothing more than a massive tomb now. For a moment, the battlefield went quiet. The Drak ships stopped firing. They had just watched their flagship die, killed by a ship they had dismissed as worthless. Then the chaos began. Without their command ship, the Drak fleet had no coordination. Different squadrons started issuing conflicting orders. Some ships turned to attack the Times Endurance Times with renewed fury. Others began retreating. A few even started fighting each other as communications broke down. And in that moment of confusion, something wonderful happened. The lights on the Alliance ships began to flicker back on. Hana's voice came over the intercom, filled with excitement. "Captain, the Drak disruption pulse is weakening. Their flagship must have been the source. Alliance ships are regaining power." Teho allowed himself a small smile. "Let them know." Wu Jin opened a broadcast channel. "All Alliance vessels. This is the human ship Times Endurance Asterisk. The Drak command ship has been destroyed. Their disruption field is failing. Your systems should be coming back online." All across the battlefield, alien crews stared at their consoles in disbelief as power returned. Weapons came back online, shields flickered to life. Engines fired. The Allied fleet was not dead, not yet. Admiral Kira stood on the damaged bridge of his flagship, watching the tactical display update with restored information. He saw the Drak flagship destroyed. He saw his own fleet battered, but still alive. And he saw the small human ship, surrounded by enemies but still fighting. "All ships," he ordered, his voice rough with emotion. "Engage the enemy. Support the human vessel." They saved our lives. It is time we returned the favor. The Allied fleet came back to life. Damaged and weakened, but filled with something new. Something that felt a lot like hope, and at the center of it all, the ugly, slow, primitive times, endurance times kept fighting, her kinetic rounds still finding targets in the chaos. The battle was not over yet. But suddenly, for the first time since it began, victory seemed possible. The last Drac ship exploded in a flash of white light, its reactor breaching under sustained fire from 3 Villani cruisers. The explosion faded slowly, its energy spreading out into the cold darkness of space. And then, for the first time in hours, there was silence. No more weapons fire, no more missiles, no more screaming alarms or desperate orders. Just silence. Captain Tejo stood on the bridge of the Times Endurance Asterisk, his legs trembling with exhaustion. He had not sat down once during the entire battle. His uniform was torn and stained with smoke. A cut on his forehead had dried blood running down the side of his face, but he was alive. His crew was alive. His ship was alive, barely. The Times, Endurance Times, floated among the wreckage, her hull covered in scars from the battle. Entire sections were dark, sealed off behind emergency bulkheads. Her engines were barely functioning, coughing out weak bursts of thrust. Of her original crew of 300, 47 were dead, and another 60 wounded. But she was still here. "Battle report," Tejo said, his voice hoarse. Yuna checked her console, her movements slow and tired. "The Drac fleet has been destroyed, or has fled. Final count shows 812 enemy ships destroyed. Another 100 captured or disabled. The remaining ships retreated to hyperspace. Allied losses." Yuna's face fell. 173 ships destroyed. Another 89 damaged beyond repair. Total crew losses estimated at over 40,000. 40,000 lives. Tejo closed his eyes for a moment. It was a victory. Yes, but it did not feel like one. What about the Alliance fleet that survived? 150 ships still operational. They are gathering at the rally point now. Yuna paused, then added quietly, "Captain, we are receiving requests to join them. Admiral Kira wants to speak with you directly." Tejo opened his eyes. Part of him wanted to ignore the request. Part of him wanted to tell Kira and the rest of the Alliance exactly what he thought of them. But that was not why they were here. "Sung Ho, can we make it to the rally point?" The pilot checked his controls. "I think so. Captain, it will be slow, but we can get there." "Do it." The Times, Endurance Times, limped through space, passing through fields of debris that had once been the galaxy's greatest warships. The crew was quiet. There was no celebration, no cheering. They were too tired, too wounded, too aware of what they had lost and what had been lost around them. As they approached the rally point, they saw the surviving Alliance ships gathered in a loose formation. Even damaged, they were impressive, their hulls gleaming with technology far beyond anything Earth could produce. Medical ships moved between them, collecting wounded and searching for survivors. And every single one of them turned to watch the Times Endurance Times arrive. "Captain," Wujin said, "the other ships are hailing us. All of them. What are they saying?" Wujin listened to his earpiece, then looked up with an expression Tejo could not quite read. "They are not saying anything, sir. They are just watching." The Times Endurance Times came to a stop among the Allied fleet. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then, one by one, the Alliance ships began to flash their lights. It started with a single Villani cruiser, then spread to a Torak battleship, then to a cluster of Nyx fighters. Within seconds, the entire fleet was doing it. Hundreds of ships blinking their lights in unison. "What does that mean?" Bora asked, confused. Yuna's voice was soft with wonder. "It is a salute. In Villani culture, flashing lights like that is the highest honor a ship can give to another. It means they acknowledge your courage and sacrifice." Tejo watched the display without speaking. The crew gathered at the windows, staring at the lights blinking across space. After all the insults, all the dismissals, all the laughter, this felt almost unreal. A communication request came through, marked as Priority 1 from the Allied command ship. Taeho straightened his uniform as best he could, and nodded to Wu Jin. Put it through. Admiral Kira's face appeared on the main screen. He looked different from before. His silver skin was dull with exhaustion, and there were bandages on 2 of his forearms. The arrogance that had defined him was gone, replaced by something else. Something that looked almost like humility. Captain Taeho, Kira said. His translator rendered his voice in clear English, but there was a thickness to it. An emotion that came through despite the technology. Admiral, Taeho replied simply. There was a pause. Kira seemed to be struggling with something, searching for words that did not come easily. We laughed at you, he finally said. We mocked your ship. We dismissed your people as primitives who had no place among us. We put you in the rear because we thought you were worthless. Taeho said nothing. He waited. We were wrong. Kira's voice cracked slightly. We were fools. While we were dying, helpless against the Drakh weapons, you came for us. You fought when you could have fled. You saved us when we did not deserve saving. He bowed his head, all 4 of his eyes closing. On behalf of the Allied fleet, on behalf of my people and all the peoples of this alliance, I apologize, and I thank you. Without your crew, without your ship, we would all be dead. The bridge of the times, Endurance Times, was completely silent. Wu Jin had tears in his eyes. Bo-Ra was gripping her console so hard her knuckles were white. Even Yuna, who rarely showed emotion, was blinking rapidly. Taeho stepped forward, closer to the screen. Admiral, he said, we did not come to this war for glory or recognition. We came because it was the right thing to do. Because when people are in danger, you help them. That is what humans do. He paused, choosing his next words carefully. You dismissed us because our technology was different. Simpler. Older. But we have learned something on Earth. Through thousands of years of survival. Advanced does not always mean better. Sometimes the old ways work when the new ways fail. Sometimes simple is stronger than complex. Kira lifted his head, listening intently. We are not asking to be treated as superior, Taeho continued. We are not asking for special treatment. We are just asking to be seen as equals. Partners. Friends who fight together. Not children who need to be protected. You have more than earned that, Kira said quietly. From this moment forward, humanity will have a seat at every council, a voice in every decision. Your ships will fight alongside ours, not behind us. And if anyone laughs at you again, they will answer to me personally. He raised one of his hands in a gesture that the translator identified as a pledge. You have the eternal gratitude of the Vellani people, and my personal respect. Whatever you need, whatever we can give you, you have only to ask. Taeho nodded slowly. Right now, Admiral, we just need repairs. And maybe some rest. For the first time, Kira almost smiled. That we can provide. The communication ended. The bridge of the times, Endurance Times, remained quiet for a long moment. Then Wu Jin let out a breath he seemed to have been holding for hours. We did it, he said, his voice filled with disbelief. We actually did it. The ship did it. Hana's voice came over the intercom. She sounded exhausted but proud. The Times Endurance Times did it. She is a good ship, the best ship. Taeho turned to face his crew, the people who had trusted him, who had followed him into what should have been certain death. You all did it, he said. Every single one of you. I have served with many crews in my career. None of them have been better than you. The crew stood a little straighter, despite their exhaustion. Now, Taeho continued, allowing a small smile to cross his face. Let us get this ship fixed. I have a feeling the galaxy is going to need us again before too long. In the hours that followed, Alliance repair ships swarmed around the Times Endurance Asterisk. Alien engineers marveled at her simple systems, asking endless questions about kinetic weapons and analog controls. Alien medics helped treat the wounded. Alien commanders came to offer personal thanks, many of them clearly uncomfortable but sincere. The Time's Endurance Times was moved to a place of honor in the center of the fleet, positioned where the flagship should be. When Tejo tried to refuse, saying the position belonged to Admiral Kira, the Admiral himself insisted. "Today, you are the flagship," Kira said. "Today, you represent the best of all of us." And as the fleet began the slow journey home, carrying its dead and wounded, there was no more laughter, no more mockery, no more dismissal. There was only respect. Somewhere in the darkness of space, the wreckage of the battle drifted silently. 1,000 ships destroyed, tens of thousands dead. It was a terrible price. But among that wreckage floated the broken hulls of enemy flagships, destroyed by simple chunks of metal traveling very fast. A reminder that sometimes, the oldest weapons hit hardest, and sometimes, the species everyone underestimates is the one that saves them all. The Time's Endurance Times had earned her name that day, and humanity had earned its place among the stars. The galaxy would never laugh at them again.